Hello, everybody. We'll give it a minute to allow some people to join. And the room will be filling up here. All right, and give it another minute or so. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Chris DeRozier, and I'm the Director of Security Solutions Business Development here at Tech Data. We've got a great webinar today on the topic of how to build security recurring revenue. So we'll be exploring that with a team of panelists you might see on video. I've got with me today Steve Curtis, Paul Rhoda, and Chris Walker. They are all senior security consultants. And we'll be discussing this topic in a little bit of detail to help you build and optimize your managed service business. So, one of the things I wanted to mention is that today's market is one where, we saw in 2020 that everybody's moving quickly to digital transformation. And this is allowing for quite a bit of acceleration in the adoption of cloud compute workloads, in terms of gaining benefits from the scalability, availability, and even the agility of all that. And as everybody moves into the cloud and takes advantage of that, what we're seeing is there's a trend of more and more opportunities for MSPs to play in that space and provide more guidance for their clients. And so we wanted to help you guys build that practice out a little bit further and give you some ideas around that. So thanks for joining, guys, and let's dive into the agenda, and we'll move on with some of the content. So the format today is a little bit of content, kind of discussing the market, followed by a conversation between myself and Steve, Paul, and Chris Walker. So this will be the agenda. We want to talk about a little bit more about the opportunity that's out there. What are some of the specifics around building a managed service business and a plan around that? And then how might you get started, from a simple transaction-based solution to even simple managed services? How can you get started in that space? And then we'll talk about how we can help you here at Tech Data to do exactly that. And then finally, we'll wrap up with this conversation between us around what we're seeing out in the market and some directions that we can take with this. So let's talk about the market opportunity. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a surge of, I think COVID and the pandemic started it, but there's a surge of demand both for managed and unmanaged devices beyond the IT perimeter. And when you combine that with I kind of see this as a perfect storm. A lot of people are, kind of working from home, creating a lot of unmanaged devices. And you look at the way that the vendors are actually shifting their offers to adapt to that new paradigm. We're seeing new continuous risk that's beyond even the endpoint these days, and actually moving into other type of SIM type functions that may include even remediated responses, right? Or responses and remediation, kind of, helping to patch up these systems and fix things up. So, and I think the pandemic, of course, has seriously increased all of this momentum, which really creates a great opportunity for all of us. So let's look at some of the top cybersecurity investments since the beginning of the pandemic. And these are technologies and kind of areas of security, which I don't think surprise anybody, but they're growing so significantly, and they're not necessarily managed in every case. So for example, multi-factor authentication has experienced tremendous growth, and there is an opportunity, I think, to provide some of these services in a managed service capacity. We can kind of explore how we go about doing that in later parts of this conversation. But this is some data from Microsoft, who would be in a really good position to know where the needs are and how they're driving growth. So some great opportunities. as we look at market opportunity, I think a lot of our IT channel partners that we work with every day are, still working kind of almost oblivious. And I think that's harder and harder to do today, to be oblivious as to what's happening in cybersecurity. I mean, if you're in security, you're starting to see it on the nightly news. But are we actually in a battle that we don't even know about? And I'm talking about some of our partners that are tuning in today. Are they actually aware of how easy it is for the bad guys, for example, to scan the internet? So 4.3 billion IP addresses in 45 minutes. Johnson & Johnson gets attacked 15 billion times a day. So just a lot of information is, and even, hacking as a service, ransomware as a service, it's all contributing to what's happening out there. So, you got to ask yourself, where are you at? Are you in the game? Are you in the parking lot? Where are you at on your journey? And then, and I think a lot of you already know kind of the differences in selling, whether it's a project or a service to these two market types. But with respect to managed services, there are some benefits to both models. And I think what I wanted to emphasize today is that if you're working in an SMB market, this is where you can actually optimize the quickest and establish a business quicker. For example, selling packages and bundles are the norm when you're building a managed service business. Lots of or less customizing is available. And then, you're obviously dealing with, in the SMB market, the decision maker. So it's a lot easier, I think, to start out in that space. And on the other side, of course, mid-market and enterprise, the deals are more complex, but also larger and more profitable. So it makes sense to build an SMB strategy and work your way up market. So what are some of the details on building a plan, right? What does that look like? So earlier I talked about where you're at in your journey, and we're seeing kind of 4 different models out there from a VAR perspective. We see product-centric resellers, drop shipping or differentiating based on price or service delivery, reputation, and relationships. Maybe for services, they'll add time and materials, and that's a great starting point in terms of using a ticketing system to be able to manage and track all that. Other VARs out there are project-driven. They'll put together a solution, implement it with, add implementation, project management services, and then come back in 2 or 3 years for some upgrade solutions. And we still see a lot of partners that are out there working on that. But I think where the benefit is this idea of recurring revenue. And this is the idea of flat fee service-based pricing. So, and we're going to talk about, what are some of the steps that are really needed to put that all together and offer some concrete advice around that. So if you're thinking about managing or creating a managed service business, there's definitely some themes that we've seen out in the market. One, of course, is owner involvement, whether it's a C-level or the president or the owner of our IT channel partner. They really need to be adopting this and driving it. The bottoms-up approach does not work. We have seen this a million times where a client executive at a reseller wants to sell managed services, and if the owner isn't behind it, it just doesn't happen. The other part is a business plan. And this is, I think, where tech data can actually help you to develop and review your business plan. With some of the guys on the phone or on this meeting today have owned managed services business. So we would love to take a look at your business plan and collaborate with you. You want to have a subject matter expert for sure around security, a security practice leader, and you definitely need to have some technicians with people skills in terms of things like onboarding and delivering that service, QBRs, or however you package your offers. So these are items, these are kind of capabilities which are definitely needed anytime you want to set up a managed service business. And this is a very high level view, but it does create a concrete timeline around how you go about starting. And I think tech data, where it says, step 1, define your service strategy, and step 2, design your solutions and vendor portfolio. These are two steps which are linear and where tech data, I think, can really help craft all that. And there's a bunch of resources that we have. It's either real time with consultants like my friends with me today, or it can be digitally through the Digital Practice Builder program. We've got a whole dedicated module that we just launched, I would say 30 days ago, which is about managed services value creation and how you do that. Of course, you want to price out your deliverables and create bundles, and then train your sales force to have them go to market. And we can certainly help with that as well. So when we look at designing step 2, designing your solutions in your vendor portfolio, this is what we're seeing out in the market often. And what's interesting and something that not everybody knows about is you might craft a 3-bundle solution, kind of good, better, best. This is very common. But what's not really well known is statistically that when end users are presented with 3 options, they more often than not take the middle option as their starting point. They may graduate to the premium offer later on, but the middle option is where they go to most. And I think knowing that and building your solution sets around that, it creates the best opportunity for you as a managed service provider to deliver the highest value and the highest gross profit in that kind of middle section, knowing that they take that most often psychologically, that's just where they go. So it really creates a nice leg up, I think, as you help craft your solutions. So lots of qualitative and valued offers are in here, but let's break this down to like the next level. What does that look like? And admittedly, as we move through these bundles, this can seem intimidating if you're just starting a managed security service business, but it doesn't have to be like this. When we kind of built out this presentation, we thought, well, what might be some obvious choices and where might you place these security services solutions in the mix? Some of these are professional services. Some of these are managed services. Some of these are managed product solutions. And it's worth kind of investigating. And that's where we can help you build that strategy around which solutions to offer and how do you staff and where do you partner? Because not everything is going to be kind of homegrown. And that's kind of the norm for today is you don't really have to build a security operations center, but you do have to assemble, the offers and craft the right relationships, and we can certainly help you do that. So moving through this, let's take a look at some simple kind of transaction-based security services or solutions, and they really kind of come, when you're just starting out, they really come in 3 different configurations. We find that when it's especially in the SMB space, managing endpoint solutions is critical. And we've got some great vendors that offer various levels of managed endpoint solutions or even co-managed endpoint solutions. Security awareness training is also critical because we believe that people are the weakest link in cybersecurity. So you want to create a culture of cybersecurity. Next up is the security maturity conversation. And this is basically a service that Tech Data offers that you can leverage to start your business. So you want to think of it as an assessment, but most assessments are thought of in terms of technical penetration tests and vulnerability assessments. But we offer a service that you can offer as well that is it's really more about a conversation that can be had with your customer around how they implement security controls and policies or not. And lightweight, easy to deliver. We can offer that either to you as a partner of Tech Data, as a complementary solution, or to your end customer, or even enable you to do it yourself. It's just that easy. So one thing I would point out is if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A dialogue. We've got a Q&A button on your Zoom controls. Go ahead and pop those in there. Sometimes people put it in the chat box, but if you could do it in the Q&A, we'll have time for questions at the end, and actually we'd love to hear from you on those questions. So feel free to add those in there. So when we look at endpoint solutions on the left here, let's take that even a step further. We've got basically three different kind of areas, starting with endpoint and even related technologies as we move up the stack. So on the far left, we've got endpoint solutions, which are common, well-known, right? Antivirus, malware, signature-based often, endpoint protection platform, EPP. And we've got many vendors that do that. But what we're starting to see now is this evolution of more intelligence being kind of curated and grabbed by these endpoint vendors to bring it into a correlation engine. And this is the idea of endpoint detection and now even response. So there's some remediation and response capabilities and notification around what you're seeing. So that's getting more and more robust. And then lastly is extended endpoint detection and response, which is the idea of implementing SIM-like or log functions even further into the endpoint correlation engine to be able to provide much more robust reporting and response capabilities. Now that actually starts to move into the next part of the stack, which is the management component, managing endpoints, managing tablets and phones, application containers, or even microsegmentation on your networks can get into more sophisticated. And then lastly is the more complicated high-end piece, which can be in our minds as we talk about this idea of starting a business, which is where we think the audience is today. They're starting or enhancing a business. When it comes to the topics on the far right there, such as establishing a SOC or implementing a SIM or security orchestration and response platform, that's where you can partner. And that's where Tech Data has multiple vendors and service providers that you can partner with as well. So we'd be happy to help you explore that and provide an integrated offer to your customers. Taking the endpoint conversation a little bit further, this kind of breaks it out from what I was talking about earlier. You could start out with kind of basic transactional. Maybe it's just protection for email systems or cloud services or things along those lines. And then you start to get into the XDR, EDR components with the automated detection, the hunting, cloud sandboxing. Let's put it on the cloud in a sandbox area and kind of open it up over there instead of on your network. So that's what's happening in these endpoint solutions. And then, of course, the idea of a master MSP, which is really what I was talking about earlier. One of the great benefits around that is where you as an MSP or aspiring MSP may not have the security experts, you can rely on them to provide not only the expertise, but also this idea of looking at attacks across the entire customer base. So those get kind of escalated and they can start to see it across their entire customer base. So that's a great benefit in terms of visibility. So with that, and I've moved through this pretty quickly, I want to slow things down a little bit and talk about, and maybe Walker and Paul, Steve, you guys can come off mute or show your videos there. We want to talk about, we've got some partners with us today that are kind of figuring out, where do they go next? How do we kind of take advantage of all of this? But one of the underlying questions I wanted to ask you guys, and any one of us can answer, is why even do this, right? Why would you want to go into it? Now I talked a little bit about the market opportunity, but there's some great reasons out there. But I wanted to hear from you guys. So let me go to you, Paul. What are your thoughts? Why would a VAR want to move into an MSP space, or maybe an MSP move into a security space?
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate the intro. Paul Rolata, I'm a security consultant here at Tech Data. I owned an MSP for many years. I successfully sold it to a national firm. There's a lot of great reasons to do it. At first, we started off as a transaction-based professional services company. We worked with clients. They wanted more of a trusted advisor long-term commitments. And we were able to, provide that service, acted as your trusted advisor. But what really is nice about it is the fact that you can have a great cash flow. So managed services, you're able to identify and grow your business, look at that cash flow, how it's coming in, and then work from there.
Yeah, yeah. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Oh, yes, definitely. Reliable source of cash flow provides that stability. Plus, clients need help. They know that they could be the next attack, that they could be attacked next. They're looking for help from folks like yourself, and if you don't provide it, someone else will. So it's good to get informed. We have a lot of tools that enable you to do that, but they're definitely looking for help.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed, is I talk to, we all talk to partners every single day, but one of the things I've noticed as partners consider building managed services business is the opportunity for them to build that and then eventually possibly even sell that through mergers and acquisitions, right? When you build up a business that has a predictable source of revenue, after a few years, maybe you've built it up to, 20 million, 15 million annual recurring revenue. That's worth something. Project-based businesses don't have that same sort of consistent cash flow basis. So to your points, guys, after a few years, you could potentially, as an owner, make yourself available or make your business available for a merger or an acquisition, and thus, a better position financially. So I think in that sense, it makes a really good investment as well. And, it also, as I mentioned before, takes clear advantage of what's happening in the market, right? Everybody's digitally transforming. Everybody's moving away from the office. There's a lot of change in the industry. There's a lot of change in the vendor community in terms of what they're offering to enable all of this. So that's probably worthy of an exploration as well. So let's move on. We'll get a question over to you, Chris Walker. So let me just move that up. All right. So we talked about a few things in, endpoint detection. What was the other one we talked about? We talked about security awareness. We talked about, I can't remember the other one. But let me ask you that it's not just those items, right? Endpoint detection or security awareness. There are some other basic elements that can be used. And I think that's part of this idea of, a partner out there that's designing the package. What are some of the other kind of real easy layups that partners can use to build a managed service security business?
Well, I'll take that. Again, my name is Walker, and I've been with Tech Data just for a short while, but I've been in the security space for 8 years, and I am a security analyst, GSEC 401. But real quick, I would like to add that the MSP space is massive in the marketplace, 250 billion and growing. So from a macro standpoint, I wanted just to add that in.
Yeah.
As why are we doing this? There's just a lot of potential for growth and innovation in this space.
Right.
So some of the simple security solutions that we can look at is low-hanging fruit, like we talked about, security awareness, low cost, high impact services that we can provide for customers. And then another one that I really like is the idea of addressing multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
That is standardizing across the industry, and companies are really looking at simple ways to further secure the borders of their companies. And the idea that an MSP can come in and say, hey, we do this all day long. It's fairly easy to do for an MSP, but for a lot of companies, it's very daunting. Another one that I think is important is the idea of providing security endpoint services, and there are so many niches that companies can look at from an MSP standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the ones that I like is, and this I've seen a lot in, partners that are starting managed service business, is managed backup and disaster recovery. I mean, that's, there's a ton of solutions out there for that. That's an easy layup. maybe even managed firewalls as a service. And sometimes I think if you're just starting a business, that can sound intimidating, but it's not as intimidating, I think, if you partner with a managed firewall as a service company and you offer that on a white label basis. And there's so many different partnerships that are available, and that's where I think Tech Data can really help. So some great feedback, guys, on kind of some basic, how do we get started down the path. This is an interesting one, and what are the different types of MSPs? And I think this often gets confused in the market space out there. So we'll just spend a minute here, just kind of clarifying, our view of managed service providers. So, Paul, you owned an MSP. How would you kind of clarify the different types of MSPs that are out there?
Yeah, managed service provider, just by the name, says it's going to be managing some type of service, right?
Right. Yep.
But there's when you start looking at you can do simple packages like we just talked about, right, delivering endpoint, and then small packages, and then you can grow into a full managed service provider, which you have a help desk and you have staff, and then you can offer additional services where, like, you're a managed security service provider and becoming a SOC. So there's different levels and commitments involved as managed service providers, each with its own positive attributes and some with more risks involved.
Yeah.
But again, you don't have to be an expert in any of these areas. You can leverage relationships, vendors, tech data, and you can grow step by step.
Yeah.
So
if I could step in here and just make a quick comment as well.
Sure.
I believe that the movement, especially with companies, they need someone to help them as almost a part of their company. And the idea of being a managed service or an MSSP, you need to have the type of experiences with them that they can rely on you as a part of their organization. And the days of just being a little more hands-off, I think, is going away. I think the idea of starting an MSSP is you have to build that trust, just like what Paul was mentioning, is the idea of building on those relationships. And when they trust you, that's where the business really becomes something of value to the customer.
Yeah.
This is Steve, by the way. I've been with Tech Data for over 13 years here, and loving helping folks protect their businesses. And what's interesting is that to be an MSP, you don't have to be technical at all, really. It's just knowing what security controls are. And one of the biggest protections that folks ignore, because it's so easy, is security awareness. The VP of engineering for MasterCard said, most folks just have a test once a year. And then she said, if you do that, you're hurting folks because they think they know how to be security aware. So, and they use that as a human is someone that's security aware is really a human firewall.
Yeah.
So a lot of ways you can get involved in that and protect your customers. And while you're doing that, you set up the security awareness testing on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. You can get to know that customer really well.
Yeah, for sure.
Helping up relationships.
Yeah.
We have a lot of vendors that do security awareness, so just ask us.
Got it. Yeah. Hey, I see some questions coming in. We're going to answer those questions for sure. And so continue to pepper us with questions. We'll collect them and answer them at the end. So thanks for being engaged today. Appreciate it. All right. So let's move on to a different topic. This is the type of question, and I think, Steve, you were actually kind of talking about that. What kind of expertise do I need to become an MSP? And I think we kind of tapped on that already, right? A little bit around, you don't have to have everything under the sun. It's certainly a graduating effort, right? To kind of start small and move your way up the stack in terms of capabilities. But I think the key here, Chris, you talked about, I believe it's $250 billion in opportunity for managed service providers out there. And I think the key really is to just be in that market, right? You may not have the most sophisticated offer in the world. You may be competing with another MSP down the street. And I've got advice around that, and that is get to know what they're doing and offer something different, right? A different slant on that. But let's go around the room, guys. What kind of expertise might be needed? Let's put a fine print on that, a fine point on that. What do you guys think around expertise? Paul, I'll start with you.
So, expertise, everybody's an expert. I mean, you're running a business. If you're buying already routers and you're installing them, you're an expert in that area. So you have to start with that. What are you good at? What are your clients buying? And then branch from there. So, if you're delivering 365, you start looking at some of the features around that, and some of the additions to that, like additional email filtering. I mean, we all know Microsoft is pretty good, but they're not super great. They got some things that they can be better at. So little things you can start working with what you're good at, and then moving to that next level and continue.
Yeah, right.
And if I can step in, that is absolutely the foundation. Then, in my opinion, what you need to become an expert at is building a business process around what you're good at. So doing some self-reflection, saying, okay, we are good at building routers, so on and so forth, but then taking a broader view of that and building a business process around it that you can duplicate and that is very efficient. That is the next step, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that needs to be a subcomponent of a business plan, right? As you look to build a managed service business or even enhance it. I mean, enhancing it assumes you've got something going and you need to kind of snapshot where you're at and then say, what's the roadmap? Well, what's this business plan to get me from kind of, training wheels off to, a drag strip, right? How do I get there? And what does my end state look like? And what is the business plan to get there? And I think part of that, you're right, Chris, is this idea of a process, to build that business. And so I think that's where tech data can really help. I mean, we've got plenty of assets and resources. It's really hard to do in 45 minutes, but we've got a deep dive in a lot of different ways to kind of help partners, develop that kind of expertise. All right, so let's move on. We got an interesting question here, and this might be one that I think I'll take. So the question is, what's the best way to train security analysts? So let's imagine for a moment we've got a partner out there that has got a nascent MSP business. They're already doing some business. Maybe they're managing virtual machines. They're spinning them up on behalf of their clients in a cloud environment. Maybe they're managing a data center environment on-prem. Maybe they're managing and monitoring networks for health and welfare, up, down, a little bit of a help desk. So they've decided that, we really want to adopt a security business. And maybe I need somebody with some skills, right? Some experience. I talked earlier about this idea of a technician with some people skills. And there's a lot of different training out there that's available, but a lot of it is kind of book stuff. It's it's abstract. It's Security Plus or other types of security training. But what's happening in the market is this idea of live interactive skills training against real life situations, right? And so we have found, Tech Data's got a great vendor called Rangeforce, and they coincidentally have, we've got some really great things coming up. So next month, we do this webinar every month, and next month they'll be featured. So please be on the lookout for the invitation around Rangeforce. But one thing I wanted to kind of tell you about is Rangeforce is an environment, it's a virtual environment that has scenarios set up. So if you have somebody out there that needs some real practical hands-on experience being challenged and being a blue team person, right, on the blue team, which is the defending side, or even the red team, the attacking side, and learning the skills that the bad guys are using, Rangeforce is set up for that. And I've got some great news. It's actually set up, we've got right now a free offer. Between now and August 8th, there's something called the Rangeforce Persistence Challenge. And later on, we're going to put some links in the chat box, and that'll be one of them. But basically what you can do is you can sign up on that link today and take part in some cybersecurity challenges. So this could be for you, for your teammates, for your security lead. You'll see things in action that hackers use, tools like Nmap or Splunk or Wireshark, very common, discovery tools as well. And the way that the challenge is set up is there's 3 levels. You've got kind of a remote IP address, who's kind of logging in to the environment. The secret is to figure out what's happening. Maybe it's a compromised account and you've got to figure out which account is compromised. So really in the weeds, in a safe virtual environment to do dangerous things and play with malware. This is just a sampling of a much larger training modality that you can learn about with Rangeforce. So again, we'll send you a custom link for Tech Data to get you that free access upcoming in just a minute. But I wanted to talk about that because, when it comes to enabling a security team or a security expert in order to help complement the building of this business, we find that's one of the best resources that is out there. All right, so thanks guys, I appreciate it. Let's move on here and talk about, like I said earlier, 45 minutes isn't really a lot of time to kind of go into the super high level, super details, but it's very high level. But I wanted to just point out some of the resources that are available to you. We heard from Paul, a former MSP owner, right? And is also a CISSP, one of the most highly credentialed credentials that are out there in the security space. We offer the security maturity assessments I was mentioning. We're vendor neutral. This team, the business development team here at Tech Data for security, is vendor neutral. So we're not really concerned with one vendor over the other. What we're really focused on is helping you to optimize your managed service business. We've got some great unique offers. I just spoke about one a few minutes ago. And then there's some tools that can help you when you want to really go big on all of this, such as the solution product inventory tool. And maybe Emily, if you're out there listening, you can fire up the chat box. I would ask you guys to kind of quickly pull up your chat function, take a look at these links that are coming your way. They will discuss, and in these links, you'll see things like the solution product inventory tool, the digital practice builder program, and the Tech Data Cyber Range. Now, in the SPY tool, if you don't know, it's an interactive line card. It's where you do research, how you select products, and it's even got a function for managed service providers so that you can determine which products are available on a subscription basis versus an appliance or perpetual software license. We also have the Practice Builder program, and I mentioned earlier we've created a new MSP module there as well. And so take a look at that. And Emily, the links that are coming across in the chat box, I don't think they made it to the link portion, with the exception of Rangeforce. I see that came across, but it looks like the links were placed as common text. So maybe you can work on that in the background. So, no problem. And all right, so as we move into our Q&A section, this is how you reach us. I wanted to point out, first of all, thanks for staying this long. Hopefully this was interesting for you today. But if you wanted to reach this team, myself, Paul, Chris, Steve, this is how you do that. You will get the opportunity to receive the recording for this. You will also get the PowerPoint if you so desire that. And we're going to send a follow-up email to you that'll have a few questions, maybe 6 or 7 questions. We'd love to get your feedback on whether this was relevant, not relevant. We're always learning and looking to provide valuable content to you guys. So make sure when you get that follow-up email, just take that 60-second survey. We'd love to get all that back to us. So given all that, Emily, if you want to come off mute and maybe you could chime in on a few questions here from the audience. I see there's a few in the inbox.
Yeah, sure. We did have a few Q&A questions come through. So one of the first ones that came through was, who is your third party for managed firewalls, and which firewalls do they cover?
Sure, I'll take that one. So great question. I really appreciate it. So we have, from a vendor perspective, we've got managed firewall capabilities around Checkpoint, SonicWall, and WatchGuard. And some of them include the service functionality with a partner. And unfortunately, off the top of my head, I don't know exactly who that is. I cannot remember. But at least from a vendor perspective, we've got those 3 vendors. And what we can do is turn all of that into a subscription. So we bill you guys on a subscription basis, and then you add your markup and your branding and your logos, and you offer that downstream to your clients. So we've got subject matter experts, we've got packaging presentations on that, and we'd love to have that side conversation with you to explain that to you. So if you wanted to explore that, managed firewall is super hot right now. Reach out to what you see on the screen there, which is securityservices@techdata.com. We'd love to set you up with that. So hopefully that helps. We're always happy to have extended conversations with anybody. Emily, what else we got out there?
Yeah, our next question is, what does the feedback look like to keep customers informed and build their trust?
Got it. I'm prepared to answer that. Anybody else want to take a stab at that within the managed service environment?
I'll mention.
Sure.
So what we did a lot is we used our blogs. I mean, that's, blogging, especially on your own site. Every time you're successful at something, you should be posting it, even if it's down to, if you've, just delivered a certain amount of routers, or if you put in firewalls, or if you block something, you should be posting it. You should be sharing that with the world, and obviously connect that to LinkedIn and start letting people know about it. Often, a lot of managed service providers uses ticketing systems, and they often have, some type of polling. Hey, how was my service?
Yeah.
Sometimes it works great. Sometimes it's not a great tool. I mean, you get what you ask for. So,
right.
So I mean, the other thing is scheduling time and having those reviews, especially assessments, quarterly assessments, follow up. I mean, assessments to me is the biggest tool to grow your business in as managed service provider. You need to sit down with them. Our SMA is the conversation about security, but there's a lot of vendors that offer great assessments that you can sit down, run tools, and get answers, and sit down and say, listen, you're failing here. You're failing in this area here. We need to work on this over the next 6 months, plan for the next budget. We need to replace this kind of hardware, or implement some new controls, awareness programs. So there's a lot of ways to get in touch with your customers. Those quarterly assessments are key. You got to sit down with them and have those conversations.
Yeah, the quarterly reviews. I always, in my background, at least, when I ran a managed service business, we would have quarterly reviews as kind of an entitlement in the good, better, best, like all 3, because we said for 1 hour, let's, have a meeting, a Zoom meeting, where we sit down and we kind of review the dashboard on a per customer basis. And what that does, to your point, Paul, it allows you to run the assessments, but it allows you, what's the byproduct of the assessment, really the benefit, is it results in projects, areas of opportunity, areas of improvement. The assessment itself is what illuminates that dark cave. And it also helps with relationship building. Sometimes, especially in the SMB space, end user clients are, really want that relationship with their managed service provider. And these QBRs provide that opportunity to create that. So great question though. Yeah, I really like that. I love the marketing approach too with the blogs. It's like on every website of every MSP should be like, the hero success stories, right? I think that's a great bit of advice there. All right. So Emily, any other questions?
Well, I know we are nearing time right now. We just have one last question. Here, I'm just starting down this path. What are the first 3 things that I should do to get started? So any next steps?
The first 3 things?
Yep.
Yeah.
I can take that if
you got it. You got it.
Yeah.
You got it, Chris.
We had talked about it a little bit before, but defining your business plan is the absolutely first thing. And in the middle of that is as we discussed before, the sales process, identifying what your unique value is to the marketplace, bringing your own experience, and then providing a pricing plan. And then number 2, and this is probably the biggest focus of our meeting today is find a good partner. And, you know, Tech Data has the tools to be a great partner for you. And then as simple as that, you start finding clients, and that's mining your relationships, mining who you've been with. So those would be the first 3 steps. Obviously there's a lot more, but it would be, you know, define your business plan. And then second, find a great partner. And then third, just start working with clients.
Yeah. Well said. I love that. And, you know, Tech Data's got a ton of resources. So we are done with our 45 minutes. I feel like this has been super productive for me. Paul, Chris, Steve, thank you for joining today. Emily, thank you for handling the Q&A duties. We'll give you guys back a little bit of time. I think actually we're right on time, but thanks so much everybody for joining today. We'll see you next month where we highlight Range Force and answer that one specific question around how do you spin up an educated security team. So we'll see you next month, and take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.